Oh no, we suck again. The Blackhawks get shut out for a league high 12th time last night, falling 2-0 to the Ottawa Senators. But to spruce up the mood on today's show, I'll be talking all about the Hawks prospects moving on to the second round of the NCAA Tournament. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Can go and give me a follow on X at JackBushman2. And make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And also, just a quick reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff is 100% free and really helps me out in growing the show. If you're someone who regularly listens to the audio version of this podcast, make sure to be downloading all of those latest episodes. You can go and rate and review the show as well if you enjoy what you're listening to on a daily basis. And also, got to let you know today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $200 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Major opportunity last night for our Hawks to pick up 3 consecutive wins for the first time here this season, and coming off of a rather nice performance in the 3-1 victory over the Calgary Flames in their last time out on Tuesday afternoon, and clearly generated some momentum following their epic 5-goal comeback victory over the San Jose Sharks to wrap up what otherwise was a pretty putrid 3-game road trip. But it felt like the Blackhawks had some steam going their way heading into Canadian Tire Center up north of the border, and also the team that they were facing, the Ottawa Senators, been one of the fellow bottom feeders, in the NHL standings along with the Hawks for most of the season, even though they had been playing better going into this game. Blackhawks also beat them 3-2 just over a month ago at the United Center, which, funny enough, was the Blackhawks' lone victory in the month of February. And they had also rattled off 11 wins in a row against the Senators dating back to 2016. So, yes, even though this game came on the road, it felt like it was still about as prime of an opportunity for the Blackhawks to win 3 consecutive games as it was going to get. But ultimately, as we know, that isn't what happened. A pretty stinker performance out of the Chicago Blackhawks, and it was bad from the get-go. It looked promising. The Blackhawks headed to the power play 9 seconds in, only to allow the Senators to score on a shorthanded rush some 30-odd seconds later and fell behind 1-0, and that ended up being the game winner because the Blackhawks did a whole lot of nothing offensively. Ends up being the 12th time that they were shut out this season, the 4th time here in the month of March, and that's the tough part about it. I've talked about how, the Blackhawks have been playing probably their best hockey of the entire season here this month. They're still capable of putting up these stinkers basically, each and every week. Yeah, they're not doing it night in and night out, but this was a very tough one to watch. Offensively, the Blackhawks literally did nothing all game long. They forced former Hawks netminder Anton Forsberg to only have to go and make 18 saves en route to a shutout victory, and the Hawks also only mustered up a whopping 4 high-danger chances at 5-on-5 all night long. And it's kind of sad because outside of the first period, the Hawks surrendered 17 shots on goal, I think it was actually, in the opening 20 minutes. It was not a very good start, but defensively the rest of the way, the Senators, were the better and the hungrier team all night long, but defensively the Blackhawks really weren't all that terrible, especially, like I said, in those final 2 periods. But what really did them in was the first period, and that's what put them in such a good place to go and get that really strong victory over the Calgary Flames earlier in the week. It was because they came out of the first period with the lead. It was only the second time they had done that in 22 games post-NHL All-Star break, and then in this one, the Hawks reverted back to them same old selves in the first period, just not nearly ready enough to go from the opening faceoff. And it's even more pathetic when you consider, like I said, the Senators here were the team that was on the back end of the back-to-back. They made it look like the Blackhawks were in that situation. And because the Blackhawks played so poorly in the opening 20 minutes, they put themselves in a hole, and the offense wasn't able to get going the rest of the way to climb themselves out of it. And not only was it a good defensive performance the rest of the way, but Peter Mrazek, can't really blame him for either of the two goals that the Senators scored in the first period. The first one, like I mentioned, was a shorthanded rush, a 3-on-2 for the Senators going the other way. Not a great play by Seth Jones in his own end to commit a turnover, and then not a good play by him also on the defensive side of things to kind of let Claude Giroux walk right down Main Street and beat Peter Mrazek with the shot. And I think Jones might have been expecting more help from Philip Kurashev there, but he has to realize, his defensive partner back in that situation is a forward, and he doesn't know how to handle these situations like a true defensive partner would. So to see Jones kind of caught in no man's land there, wasn't a good look right off the rip. And then the second goal from the Senators was even tougher to watch because, just a shot from the point by Parker Kelly. For whatever reason, Nikita Zaitsev tries to go and glove it, deflects off of his glove and past Peter Mrazek, puts the Senators ahead 2-0. Those were the lone goals that they scored in this game. Other than that, Peter Mrazek was really, really solid. Like I said, faced 17 shots in the first period and stopped all 15 of them, and then stopped 32 of the 34 shots on the night in total. So Mrazek, even though it had been a little bit of a bumpy stretch for him in the past month, nice to see him settle things down and have a really solid game that could have been his second shutout of the year against Calgary, only to get foiled late. And even in a losing effort here against the Senators, he was really solid. But other than Peter Mrazek, not a whole lot of talking points because, like I said, this was just such a putrid offensive showing out of the Blackhawks. Only other real takeaway I have is two more. Nikita Zaitsev, not only did he play a huge factor in the Senators' second goal of the game, maybe acting as a Senators spy since we acquired him from Ottawa around this time last season. But in all seriousness, Zaitsev did have to leave this game early, midway through the second period, and did not return. Coach Luke Richardson mentioned it was an upper body injury along with the combination of an undisclosed illness, and just said that Zaitsev wasn't good enough to be an NHL defenseman. So kind of a tough look there for Zaitsev, but sounds like he's not going to be playing also tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Flyers. Jared Tenorti is going to jump in for him. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a long-term injury for Zaitsev or that he's going to miss multiple games here, but if that were to be the case, it would leave the Hawks with only 6 defensemen on their active rosters and they would likely have to call someone up from Rockford, which I don't think they want to do, particularly with them absolutely cooking right now, gearing up towards the Calder Cup playoffs. Also, the Blackhawks, with their loss last night to the Senators, still stuck on just 6 road wins here this season, with 5 games left on the road remaining in the year. And the fewest wins that the Blackhawks have mustered up in a single season on the road in franchise history are 7, which came back in 2003, 2004, and also the Thrashers' 5 road wins in 1999-2000 was the lowest in NHL history with an 82-game schedule. So the Blackhawks are right there with some of the worst road teams in NHL history, and also the worst Blackhawks teams in franchise history. So never a good conversation to be in. It has been such a struggle for the Blackhawks on the road all night long. That's really something that Luke Richardson and this coaching staff are going to have to focus on heavily going into next season, when I think we're actually going to want to see some results and some progression out of this Blackhawks team. All right, there are my thoughts on the Blackhawks. Rough 2-0 loss to the Ottawa Senators last night. It was basically unwatchable. Coming up in just a moment, though, we'll get on a much more fun topic of conversation as I'll get into some updates from day 1 of the 2024 NCAA Tournament. But first, I got to talk to you all about FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game of the NCAA tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed to get it all, to win it all, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, if you're a new customer, you can get $200 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Yes, you heard me correct. $200 worth of bonus bets if your first bet worth of $5 wins. And you can use these bonus bets to bet on everything from point spreads to money lines, live bets, player props, same game parlays, and you can even predict who's going to win the national championship game. All you got to do is go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Segment 2, with the Blackhawks putting up a stinker of a performance last night up in Ottawa. Fortunately, the same cannot be said about several Blackhawks prospects in their respected teams in the first day of the 2024 NCAA Tournament. And as I outlined earlier on in the week, Aidan Thompson in the Denver Pioneers, Ryan Greene, Macklin Celebrini, the projected number 1 overall selection in the 2024 NHL Draft in Boston University, and Sam Rinzel, Oliver Moore, and the Minnesota Golden Gophers all played their first games of the tournament yesterday afternoon and yesterday night, and they all managed to come through for the win. The first game of the day was the Pioneers, Aidan Thompson in Denver, taking on Liam Gorman, actually a fellow Blackhawks prospect, in the UMass Minutemen. Gorman, though, someone that I do not believe is ever going to sign an entry-level contract. Coming into this game, he had only tallied 3 points in 27 games in his first year with the Minutemen after transferring over from Princeton, excuse me. I don't know why I'm butchering all my words all of a sudden. So not exactly the most productive senior campaign for Liam Gorman, and I just don't really see the Blackhawks having all that much intrigue there. However, funny enough, Denver took the lead in this one 1-0 early, but Liam Gorman was the man to answer the bell for the Minutemen, tying the game up 1-1 by knocking home the loose puck. Heck of a time for Gorman to pick up his first goal of the season with UMass. That tied the game 1-1, but that was all the scoring we got in regulation, and this game was crazy. I didn't get to watch the first 30 minutes of it, but I got to watch the ending of this game, and boy, was I glad I did. This game did not need one overtime. It needed to go into double overtime to determine a winner. Michael Hrabal, who has been fantastic for UMass all season long, and kind of watching him ball out for the Minutemen yesterday made me have a little bit of buyer's remorse on Adam Guyan being the first goaltender off of the board in this past year's draft. That's a conversation I'll certainly be having sometime here this summer. Hrabal was fantastic all game long to keep UMass in it, but eventually the Pioneers were too much. Tristan Braz winds up with the game-winning goal on a harmless-looking shot from the point, and the Pioneers are moving on to the second round of the tournament. They'll be facing Cornell, one of the best defensive teams in the country, in the regional finals. That'll be televised tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Time. On Saturday, 3 p.m. Central Time. Just want to make sure to preface that because I don't know when everyone's going to be tuning into today's episode. Then, as I mentioned, Ryan Greene, Macklin Celebrini, and Boston University also had themselves a game. It was the second game of the day in the NCAA tournament, and they defeated RIT pretty handedly with a 6-3 final. Ryan Greene with a beauty of a goal to put the Terriers ahead 2-0 on a 2-on-1 in transition. An absolute howitzer of a shot up over the opposing goaltender's glove. That was his 12th tally of the season and third over the last 2 games to extend his point streak to 5 games. Macklin Celebrini also found the back of the net, as he seemingly does night in and night out. His 32nd goal of the season and just his 36th game. And oh yeah, he's still only 17 years old. The Terriers wind up cruising to victory 6-3 over RIT. They're moving on to the regional finals tomorrow. Well, they'll be taking on the Minnesota Golden Gophers at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Ooh, baby, what a matchup that is going to be. The Golden Gophers, Sam Rinzel, Oliver Moore, also get there by defeating Omaha 3-2 in a very tight-knit game in the first round of the NCAA tournament. 2 late goals by Jack Clark, including the game winner with only a couple of minutes left in regulation, lift the Gophers over the Lancers. No points for any of the Hawks freshman prospects in this game, but like I said, a huge tilt against Ryan Greene and Macklin Celebrini in the next round. That's going to be must-see TV at 5:30 p.m. Central Time on Saturday afternoon. And then the other Blackhawks prospect taking part in the NCAA tournament is Frank Nazar and the Michigan Wolverines. They'll be getting their tournament started here in just about an hour's time, as they'll be taking on North Dakota in a heavyweight bout. And the question is, will this be Frank Nazar's last game with the Michigan Wolverines? Scott Powers of The Athletic wrote an article about this earlier. It feels like the ball is in Nazar's court right now in terms of it's going to be his decision as to whether he wants to return to Michigan for his junior season or if he's going to be making the leap to professional hockey and possibly suiting up for the Blackhawks in his NHL debut in one of their final 9 games here of the regular season. Powers seems to think what I've mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that things are trending in the direction for Nazar to make the jump, but you never know, especially with maybe how the tournament ends. If they lose this game tonight against North Dakota, is he going to have a bad taste in his mouth? Is he going to want to go back to Michigan to try and lead them to a better run in hopes of a national championship next season? Those are questions you got to consider. But if they do lose here tonight, there is that possibility that Frank Nazar could be joining the Blackhawks as early as sometime next week. Feels like the game is trending in the right direction for him to do so, coming off of a big season for the Wolverines and at the World Juniors. I personally think we're going to be seeing Frank Nazar with the Blackhawks before the end of the year, but it's not set in stone at this point in time. And we also got to see what happens with Nazar, Frank the Tank, and the Wolverines here in the NCAA tournament. A big tilt tonight to get it underway for them as they're taking on North Dakota at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. All right, there's my recap of day 1 of the 2024 NCAA tournament. A lot of wins for Blackhawks prospects. I do apologize, Liam Gorman. Coming up in just a moment here, don't go anywhere because I do got to get into a couple other updates on Blackhawks prospects, including Roman Kantserov beginning his KHL postseason run. But first, I got to talk to you all about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or else you'll get your money back. So keep your ride or die alive, at ebaymotors.com. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that win. Again, that's ebaymotors.com. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, a quick reminder to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I really do appreciate it. And also, got to let you know about the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7 covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So sign up today. So go and check it out today. Check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I got a case of the Fridays here today, Blackhawks fans. I can feel that weekend just closing in. I'm not in the perfect state of mind, and it has been a rather long week here. Anyway, segment 3, before I wrap up today's show, I've obviously been talking a lot lately about all the Hawks prospects in the NCAA tournament and the OHL playoffs getting underway yesterday as well. Well, I also wanted to be sure to mention that Roman Kantserov, Blackhawks second-round pick in the 2023 NHL draft, and Metallurg have also begun their KHL postseason run as well. And Metallurg is actually the first seed in the Eastern Conference for the KHL playoffs. They won their first series by a 4-2 margin, and they're now currently ahead 3-2 over Moscow Spartak in the KHL quarterfinals, 1 win away from the KHL conference championships and being one of the final 4 teams remaining. And The article that I mentioned earlier from Scott Powers that he dropped this morning, he talked a little bit about Kantserov, and he mentioned that this has been a rather ideal season for him. Maybe not in terms of production. You would have liked to see him. It was always going to be tough for him, though, as a 19-year-old kid playing in what's considered to be the second best professional league in the world. You don't want to critique his production, but it worked out perfectly for him in terms of playing in the KHL each and every day, because last year he played mostly in the MHL. He actually only got one game of KHL action. So I don't know if the Blackhawks were very sure as to which league he was going to be playing in more so than the other. It felt like it could have been another back and forth situation for Kantserov, or he could have even played in the VHL, but he wound up playing in the KHL for the entire season for Metallurg, and now he's playing an even more meaningful role for them here in the postseason. A third line role, averaging 14 minutes and 14 seconds of ice time. That's 2 minutes more than what he was typically getting throughout the regular season. And he's also tallied 2 goals and 4 assists for 6 points in 11 postseason games. Not bad for a kid who's still 19 years old, and 3 of those 4 assists that I just mentioned have been primary assists as well. So great showing here in the most meaningful time of the year over in the KHL out of Kantserov, someone who is a great skater, has very dynamic offensive abilities, lots of skill, lots of offensive upside. He's a very intriguing prospect. We do know he's going to be in the KHL until at least the end of next season, but this does seem like a nice point for him to take on a more meaningful role for Metallurg next season, especially if they can, F around and go and win the KHL championship this season. Still doesn't turn 20 years old until September later on in the fall. So being a young kid in the KHL, you got to be happy with how things have worked out for Roman Kantserov. Will be fun to see him continue on this postseason run for Metallurg as they try to get to the conference championships, just one win away from that. Also, wanted to be sure to mention we got a little bit of a Dominic Basse update, and I get so many questions about Dominic Basse all the time on like Mailbag Mondays and stuff. Well, now that St. Cloud State's season has come to an end, they unfortunately did not qualify for the NCAA tournament. Dominic Basse has reportedly hit the transfer portal, and I'm guessing that probably stems from him being pushed out of the starter spot in the most meaningful games at the end of the season as St. Cloud State was trying to work their way into the tournament. He wound up being the backup for most of those crucial games, and that's because he just did not have a particularly great second season with St. Cloud State after a really good campaign the year prior. Basse had a .896 save percentage and a .275 goals against average in 25 games this season. So going to be curious to see where he takes his talents to for his final year of eligibility. But it sounds like it would have to be a very good year for him to get back on the Blackhawks radar. According to Powers, it doesn't sound like the Blackhawks are planning on signing Basse as of now, unless something crazy happens. So we'll see where he winds up. He's going to be turning 23 years old next month, 1 year left of NCAA eligibility. Hopefully he makes the most of it as a starter somewhere, because it sounds like that's what it's going to take for him to have an NHL future, at least here with Chicago. And then I do want to be sure to just bring up something really quick. Yuri Felchman, 3rd round pick in 2023 this past year, after Nick Lardis, by the way. I saw someone in the comment section say, pretty sure he got taken in the 3rd round before Lardis and before Ferrand. He did get drafted before Alex Ferrand, but not before Nick Lardis. But he recently signed an ATO with the Rockford Ice Hogs. But the plan for him is to be going back to Switzerland next year. Mark Eaton of the Blackhawks front office said that the hope is, because he's played in the U20 league this season and been over in Switzerland for a handful of years now, it looks like it's created a nice bridge for him to go and play in the National League next year, which is the top league over in Switzerland. And Eaton said that's really what he needs to kind of take his game to the next level and properly develop to come over to North America. So the plans for Felchman, yes, are to go back to Switzerland next season, despite signing an ATO with the Rockford Ice Hogs this year. But lots of prospect updates, fun time to be covering Blackhawks prospects. Hopefully we'll be getting a lot of championship games and fun watches out of these guys, and I'll be covering all of it right here on Locked On Blackhawks. And that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again to everyone for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. And that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's uploaded each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2. Make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, enjoy your weekend. I'll see you on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network,